Welcome to the podcast of the Political Page blog with commentary from an attorney and entrepreneur on the political and social issues of the day, from a rationalist, libertarian, and often irreverent perspective. This is Political Page, and here's what's on my mind today. Hello and welcome to the podcast of the Political Page blog. This one is dated the 26th of August, 2019, and it's entitled, It's Called Negotiation, You Hysterical Ninnies. Well, who could have predicted this? Everyone could, of course, except for the mainstream media, nervous bureaucrats, and the ever-hysterical left. The news stream today opened with the disclosure that Japan and the United States just reached a major new trade framework. Let's see, that follows who? Canada, Mexico, the European Union, New Zealand, South Korea, Singapore, Australia, Peru, Colombia, and Chile. And others. Those are just the big ones. Oh, yes. And another little tidbit. China just announced that it wants to come back to the table. Yes, after the terrible, horrific, devastating, apocalyptic trade war that has had the progressives and the media in ever spiraling rounds of hyperbole for the past, 1-2 years? China was never coming back to that table, not ever. Pie charts about the relative negotiating strength between our two countries notwithstanding, China was the new powerhouse of the planet, and it was going to trample us into the impoverished dirt. And it was going to all be Donald Trump's fault. Except, well, here are the Chinese, limping back to the table, and they look, a bit bruised about the gills. They want calm, they said. They want a deal. Donald looks happy. A deal? He likes those. And for a little trip down memory lane, let's take a look at what Trump is doing and how that's been perceived by the rabid alarmists in the global media and how it's turned out instead. One might recall that all of this negotiation, that's a word that Barack Obama believed was synonymous with capitulation, not to mention groveling, bowing, fawning, and peeing on one's belly. This began the negotiation with the terrifying specter of Donald Trump trashing the one-sided NAFTA deal. Remember NAFTA? NAFTA, for those with short memories, left the U.S. subsidizing our lovely neighbor to the south to the tunes of billions of dollars of unequal trade, while the grateful Mexico reciprocated by sending hordes of the pathetic citizens beggared through its own idiotic policies across our non-existent southern border, together with equal hordes of MS-13 gang members, convicted criminals, drug mules, human traffickers, and massive loads of fentanyl. The human tide included anyone from Central America who wished to waltz across its own southern border and hitch a ride with a Mexican transit visa to then crash the U.S. border and sign up for benefits on the back of the stupid Norte-Americanos who were afraid of upsetting their wonderful economic deal with said Mexican government. So Trump ditched NAFTA. Oh, and as he did, he primed the negotiating pump by hitting both Mexico and Canada with tariffs equivalent to the ones they impose on us. The horror. And then he gave Canada a totally unreasonable deadline to come to a deal which would never, ever happen. And he told Mexico that they needed to start cooperating on the border or tariffs would be the least of their problems. The media lost its collective hive mind. Reuters warned U.S. agriculture would be decimated. The U.S. poultry industry would be hit hard. A vast array of products would spike in price by at least 20%. Fox warned us of dire impacts on the financial markets. Panels of experts wrung their hands and predicted economic and foreign policy devastation for the United States. If NAFTA was terminated, one sobbed, I don't see how we could replace it. Another quote, the United States is already starting to suffer. Auto manufacturing would be hit hard. Here's a quote, Europe is striking deals with Canada and Japan and negotiating with South America. The United States, once an economic superpower upon whose economy the whole world turned, would be sidelined. Wow. So what really happened? Well, Mexico and Canada came to the table within Trump's deadline. They renegotiated the trade deal. It was replaced with the USMCA, see, U.S., Mexico, Canada, get it? Addressing most of Trump's trade concerns, particularly in the automobile and agricultural sectors. And within a year, Mexico and Guatemala, threatened with both tariffs and cuts to aid, agreed to tighten up their borders, assume first safe nation status, accept migrants back into their countries to await U.S. court proceedings, and put troops on their northern borders. And as a result, Border crossings are down 43% since May. Now, granted, the crisis is not over by a long shot, but Mexico is suddenly a very different partner, as is Guatemala. And now Trump is moving on to, quote, talk to Panama and El Salvador. Oh, and one other detail. Remember the threat that we were going to be sidelined because nobody would want to talk to us? It was the U.S., not Europe, who went on to strike deals with Canada and Korea and Japan and South America. So much for being sidelined. Apparently, notwithstanding Donald Trump being in the presidency, we remain strangely relevant on the global stage. Which brings us to the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Remember that one? It's between the U.S. and 11 Pacific Rim countries, and it was similarly tanked by Donald Trump. He dumped the pact with a stroke of a pen, the shocked media bellowed. Everyone had a hissy fit. The remaining 11 nations signed some tepid deal without their major trading partner, us. Trump appeared unconcerned. He'd negotiate individually with the Pacific Rim countries that actually mattered to him. Oh, the experts and the media were not to be soothed. This went even further than NAFTA. Trump was assaulting the global trading system. He was flouting international trade rules, and there is no going back. With the end of the TPP, prices would skyrocket in the United States. Entire industries would die. The stock markets would tank. The U.S. agricultural market alone would lose $1.8 billion. Worse, we looked like fools. This was not the normal way of doing business. It was diplomacy under cannon fire. Just blustery threats of massive import taxes and trade wars. This, the elite sniffed, was the way crass business people negotiated things. Trump can't just snap his fingers, they said, the way he might redecorate a hotel. How crass, how doomed. The world would reject us and the U.S. would be sidelined. Wait, is that starting to sound familiar? So what happened? Well, we negotiated new trade deals with, you ready? Japan, New Zealand, South Korea, Singapore, Canada, Mexico, Chile, and Australia. The deals were individually tailored to the trading needs we have with each individual country, but wait a minute, we missed Brunei, didn't we? Well, don't worry about it. We already had a free trade agreement with Brunei, so let's see, that's 11 out of 11. All done. You know, oddly enough, being the largest economy on the planet and the economic engine that powers everyone else has some benefits. Chief among these is that smaller, and they are all much, much smaller, economies are very anxious to have trade deals with the United States, despite said deals being offered through a, what did they call it? Assault on the global trade system, blustery threats of taxes, or discussions akin to decorating hotel rooms. Perhaps Trump didn't just snap his fingers and get those deals, but as these things go, they were neatly lined up and tied up with pretty little bows within a few months of opening talks. Go figure. Which brings us to the big one, China. The header of this blog, and again, you're on a podcast so you can't see it, I recommend you go to the blog, take a look at it, is a pie chart, and it is an eye-opener of note. It shows the relative sizes of the global economies in the entire planet. A quick glance shows us that the U.S., notwithstanding alarmist headlines about the surge of China, is still the big bear in the global forest. Mexico and Canada are tiny in comparison. All the Pacific Rim countries, South America, Africa, the EU, they're dwarfed by us. The only one that comes close, and it's still less than 2/3 our size, despite having 3 times the population to work with, is China. And to continue our Ursine metaphor, in the dark woods of global trade, China is not the biggest bear, but it's a decent-sized omnivore. And Trump being Trump, the nattering ninnies of negativism had panic attacks when it came to this pending clash of titans. Well, a clash of at least the U.S. and the next nearest thing we have to a titan. They knew what was coming, more filthy trade negotiation, like a business person instead of an elite. And if they quailed at the abrupt negotiations over NAFTA and TPP, they were sent into cardiac arrest when Trump started in on the real adversary. What came before was polite practice. This was going to be hardball. And, of course, the screeching and squealing and wailing and gnashing of teeth from the Democrats, the global progressives, the EU, and most of all, the American media, hit new heights of hyperbole. Assaulting systems, global cannon fire, pending disaster, dying farmers, worldwide economic collapse. Am I forgetting anything? Oh, yeah, America sidelined again. You know, a brief timeline of the Trump versus China negotiation can be found linked at the blog. It is fascinating. But in summary, the U.S. and China have been engaged in a global trade chess match since early 2018, in which, tariffs are announced, retaliatory tariffs are announced, talks are held, talks are canceled, agreements are made, tariffs are postponed, tariffs are put back into effect, agreements are reneged on by China, new tariffs are announced again, key companies on each side are targeted, and on and on and on. Trump and Xi are playing chicken, and for the first time, the Chinese have an American president who's willing to suck it up and take the body blows. Someone had to finally deal with China, and tongue firmly in cheek, Trump shrugged and said he must be the chosen one. What was the downside? That the media aren't going to like him? But as 2018 and 19 unfolded, the same funny thing kept happening again. Every time a new blow or counterblow was struck, global markets trembled, American progressive politicians, mainstream media shrieked apocalypse. And every time the howls of angst quieted down to a whimper, there was no American impact. Nothing. Well, there were some sales of farm products that were neatly addressed by the U.S. buying it back, and now Japan's agreed to do so. See how that works? Minimal increases to U.S. consumers appear to be temporary. They barely registered. And the losses to China were vicious and quite likely permanent. The International Monetary Fund expressed its incredible surprise. They're experts, of course, they're surprised that the U.S. and Japan did so much better than expected in 2019, while China experienced drastic drops in growth and increases in debt. Chinese growth has hit a 28-year low, even by their own rosy reporting, which is usually a lie. And looking beyond the official and artificial Chinese numbers, economists have found a massive collapse of demand for durable goods in China, those big purchases that drive an economy and manufacturing. The yuan is weaker, Chinese companies are swamped with debt, interest rates are rising, and the next step they're contemplating is a massive quantitative easing. That same failed borrowing policy that drove the U.S. into the ground when Barack Obama tried it in 2009, and that's their upside. And this morning, the Chinese yuan hit an 11-year flat line, and the Asian markets tanked. Why? Because Trump just slapped tariffs on another $550 billion, that's billion dollars of Chinese products, and his advice to American business was that they seriously investigate new lines of supply from other developing countries because he's thinking of declaring a national emergency and requiring U.S. firms to freeze their business with China. They could finish up their current contracts, but no more goodies. His only regret was he expressed that he wasn't sure he should have stopped those new tariffs at only $550 billion. Maybe he should revisit that. The result? China just announced they want a calm end to the trade war, and they're coming back to the table. Trump smilingly voiced optimism. I think, he said, we're going to have a deal. It's called negotiation. Thank you for tuning in to the Political Page podcast today. Original blog articles, complete with a lot more information and great links to original source material, can be found anytime on politicalpage.net. That's political, P-A-I-G-E.net.